Welcome, everyone, to our first Wednesday webinar of National Water Safety Month. My name is Adam Ketchmarch with PHTA Education. As always, joined by my colleague Diana Bouts, who's in the background today, helping do our webinar controls. We are here for a live discussion with Rowdy Gaines as we kick off National Water Safety Month. Before we get started, just want to do a few reminders. Number one, thank you to Pentair for sponsoring our National Water Safety Month activities. We have a number of webinars this month that'll be touching on water safety, as well as our number of our National Water Safety Month partners that include the American Red Cross, the World Water Park Association, the National Parks and Recreation Association, as well as the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. Just a couple reminders, we do have a number of live virtual Genesis education opportunities available in the month of May. We have Genesis D231, Color Theory and its application, that takes off in May, as well as Genesis E211, Fluid Hydraulics for Pools and Spas. These are live virtual classes. You can go over to the PHTA events calendar to learn more about those opportunities. PHTA is also excited to announce the launch of our new pool math course that's now available on our learning system. We encourage you to check it out. And it is never too early to start planning to attend the PHTA and Genesis Mastermind event, September 23rd to the 25th in Fort Lauderdale. We're looking forward to a number of days of education, and it's, again, going to be a great location in Fort Lauderdale in September. We also have other water safety webinars coming up in the month of May. Next week, we'll be joined by the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan and get an overview of their work. And then on May 21st, we'll be joined by Steve Barnes talking about entrapment safety in the month of May. So let's dive in and let's welcome Rowdy Gaines. Rowdy is the voice of swimming for NBC. He's a three-time Olympic gold medalist, and he is also the VP of Partnerships and Philanthropy, leading our Step Into Swim program at the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. Rowdy, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Adam. So great to be with you, buddy.
So, Rowdy, let's get started. And something I always love hearing from you. I want to talk about your Olympic journey, but I want to start off really early on in that journey. Can you tell us, your first earliest memory as it relates to swimming?
Sure, Adam. Well, I grew up in Winter Haven, Florida, which is like if you threw a dart to the state, you'd hit right there in the middle of the state, right between Tampa and Orlando. And Winter Haven has about 125 lakes. So I grew up on a lake my whole life. My parents water skied for a place called Cypress Gardens. No longer exists. It's now Legoland. But we lived on that lake, and they would literally take the boat across the lake to go to work every day, and I'd hang out with my grandparents who lived next door. So my earliest memory is learning to swim in the lake. My mom always used to tell me that I learned how to swim before I learned how to walk. At a very young age, even back then. This is a long time ago, buddy, long before you were born. Both my parents believed in water safety, especially the fact that our house was 10 feet from the water. And so did it a little bit differently. I don't have memories of this, but it used to be she'd tell me that they had a styrofoam bubble on my back, and she'd shave it off through the summer. And by the end of the summer, I'd be just swimming with a belt, We don't do that anymore, but it was important for them. And so water is part of the fabric of my being. I say it's part of my DNA for sure. It's the greatest joy I've ever had is around water.
And Rowdy, I think it's really interesting that you brought up the lake aspect of this, because so often I think we think of learn to swim as taking place in a pool, right? And so oftentimes now in the United States, that's where the predominance of our learn to swim programs are in
Mhm.
pools. But it's always interesting to me is, I'm going to do a little plug to Pool Horizons. If you've not checked out Pool Horizons, this is an industry-wide global initiative about how we talk about pools. I was fortunate enough to chair the Safer Water group with our friend Sabina. And it's so interesting because when you look at countries like Bangladesh, that's really where Learn to Swim's taking place right now, is in natural water. So I just want to point it out. It's interesting that you actually got your start in natural water.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, again, back then we didn't have pools. There was no swimming pools in Winter Haven, Florida. We lived way out in the country. I mean, when I was a little a little boy. I mean, it was like 4 or 5 miles out on a dirt road. I mean, that's how far out we lived. So, but the importance of water safety knows no boundaries, right? We know that, and so many drownings happen in an open water situation. Certainly, those that are at a younger age are much more susceptible in a pool or hot tub or even in a bathtub. But those older children sometimes, in fact, we had a drowning in Winter Haven just this past fall, maybe this winter, of a father and a son that drowned while out on a boat. So it's a tragedy no matter where it happens.
Yeah. Rowdy, tell me a little bit about how you got into competitive swimming, because I think sometimes when we think about Olympic athletes such as yourself, we think that you were likely swimming since age 4, age 5 competitively, but I think your journey started a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, again, I learned how to swim at a very early age, but that was just recreational. I learned how to water ski when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and those are the things our whole life, our lives revolved around water activities. So I certainly knew how to swim, but I didn't start competitive swimming till I was 17. I was a junior in high school when I went out for my high school swim team. And a lot of it was because a friend of mine who was legally blind at the time wanted to go out for swimming. So I kind of tailed him and helped him. And I said, well, I might as well try out too. And plus, after failing in so many other sports, I tried out for 5 other sports before swimming, and got cut in all of them. Swimming was just next in line. Adam, so the day I went out for swimming, I'll never forget it. I went to the school library and checked out a book on track and field because I felt like if I got cut in swimming, I could always rely on track and field, and oh yeah, the pole vault looks great. That's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I think the lesson learned there was I never gave up. I never gave up on trying to excel at something. I didn't have any dreams of going to the Olympics when I first started competing, but once I didn't get cut after a couple of weeks, I knew that that was going to be the sport I fell in love with.
Yeah. What was one of your greatest challenges leading up to your Olympic journey?
Well, there were a couple. I mean, certainly when I first started out, the swim coach was also the football coach, so he didn't know anything about swimming. He learned, he ended up actually giving up football and just coaching swimming, and still to this day is a good friend. But
Wow.
you know, it was a challenge to find warm water. And even Florida in February, the water's cold, it gets in the 60s and low 70s. And I was a skinny little kid, my man. And so cold water was affecting me in many ways at the local Y that we swim at. So a coach told me that I needed to find a way to swim in the mornings. And so I would, again, I don't promote this, but back then, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, I would sneak into motels because they had warm water. Now the pool was only 30 feet long, but it had warm water. And so I'd sneak into a motel, last about a week, get kicked out, and sneak to the next motel. Not hotels, buddy, motels.
Yeah.
And so those were challenges in the early days. And then, the biggest challenge I think I faced during the part where I excelled on a national and international level was the 1980 boycott because our country didn't go to those Olympics, and so it was a tough time because in our sport, there's no Super Bowl, right? The Olympics is our Super Bowl, and for that to be taken away, it was 8 years between Olympic Games. So that was certainly a time of my life where it was tough. But I've always said I had 1984. There were 363 athletes that made the 1980 Olympic team that didn't make it in 76 and didn't make it in 84. Those are the ones that I really feel for, and the fact that they didn't have their quote unquote Olympic dream actually come true.
Yeah. It has to feel really special to see the Olympics coming back to Los Angeles in 2020.
Mm. Oh, it does. It's going to be so cool. 44 years, kind of come full circle. LA did a magical job in 84, and I know they'll do the same. in 2028. They'll be ready. It's a great city, and I know that I know that I'm really excited about returning, quote unquote, home.
No, that'll be really special. I think we're all looking forward to that. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of learning to swim. And I want to start about at early ages. Why do you think swimming should be prioritized as a child's
Hmm.
first?
Don't you get, tell me, Adam, I'm going to turn it back to you. Don't you get asked that question almost more than any other? When I'm
Number,
around parents or something, they ask me, what age do I start swim lessons for my child? I'm
Mhm.
not the professional you are. I will give you my opinion and then you come in with a professional side, okay?
Sure.
My opinion is when a child learns how to walk, they should be at the very least, introduced to the water. Um, and there is that controversy behind the ISR programs, and we all have our feelings about that, good and bad. But that water, and you've told me this over and over again, that water is like a magnet to a kid. And you really said something that was fascinating to me a couple of weeks ago when we talked about being on the Today Show next week. And I said, well, the number one rule should be parents should be, the first line of defense. Parents never take your eye off your child. And you said, actually, that should be number two.
Mhm.
I mean, it's critical, obviously, the utmost important, but the number one should be put your child in swim lessons because it's crazy to think that a parent will always be able to watch their child. It's just it doesn't happen, and we've seen that over and over again. So if a child knows how to have that skill of being able to float on their back, for example, that's what's critical. So getting back to your question, my idea is always one that says, boy, when that kid learns how to walk, they're going to find water.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my opinion. All right, let's go to the professional and ask them.
Well, I think you said it perfectly, Roddy, and it's when the child gets mobile, right? Because whether it's, a backyard pool, whether it's a pond in your property, whether it's a river, a lake, a creek bed, whether you're oceanside, water's attractive to young children, right? And one of the most alarming statistics that I know of is, close to 70% of our toddlers are actually experiencing their drowning during a non-swim time. We think of water safety as it comes to swim time and being around the water with your family, and absolutely critical to follow all those safety steps during those swim times. But it's sometimes when the child is done swimming for the day, you kind of retreat it inside, everyone's getting ready for dinner. That pool's still calling out as a fun, activity, a fun environment to a young child, right? And that's not to, dismiss at all the importance of parental supervision and caregiver supervision, right? Probably the thing that stuck with me the most over the years is Dr. Ben Hoffman, who is the past president of the American Academy of Pediatrics this year. Ben said to me one time, parental supervision is probably the most important thing, but it's the number one thing that's going to fail when a drowning takes place. Um,
Really
and
good.
that's where, we
You need to
talk.
send me all this for the Today Show, by the way.
Oh, I'm happy to do that for you, Rowdy.
That's a,
We're
I'm going to steal that, by the way, buddy.
Absolutely. And that's to me that whole layers of protection piece, right? Making sure there's multiple layers of protection in place from barriers to supervision
Yeah,
to being ready. I mean, the reality is, hey, even good swimmers can run into trouble in the water. So knowing what to do if something bad
absolutely.
happens can really, really help. I guess another question that you and I often get is what advice would you give to parents who might be hesitant or fearful about enrolling their child in their first learn to swim experience?
Well, and I have found that especially in the minority community, with African American adults, Hispanic adults, and we did a study, as you know, of with the University of Memphis and then the
Mhm.
University of Las Vegas, Nevada, Las Vegas, about why um, more African American children, minority children, didn't know how to swim, and the biggest reason is the parent is afraid of the water. And that fear is passed down generationally. There were other factors, obviously, but that was the number one factor on why more minority children didn't know how to swim. And so I think in a lot of cases, that fear of the parent not knowing how to swim says, "Oh, I don't want to put my kid in near water. I don't want to do that." So that's something that they have to overcome and realize that you're putting your child in swim lessons to save their lives. Yes, you're giving them an opportunity to enjoy that the rest of their lives. But the biggest reason, and this is why when we give a grant to swim lesson providers, I could care less if they become Michael Phelps. Hey, that's a great byproduct. They join a swim team and become competitive. That's awesome. All I care about is saving a life, you know. That's the main priority behind Step Into Swim. So that has to be a main priority for a parent because swimming, as you know, you've said this over and over again. I think you were the first one to say it, that swimming is the only sport that can save a life, you know. It's great that you play volleyball or soccer, but that's not going to save your life. You know, so having that lifelong skill of swimming is so important and it needs to be important to that parent.
Yeah, and completely. Let's talk a little bit about Step Into Swim. Tell us a little bit about the initiative and how it impacts underserved communities across this country.
Yeah, you know, Step Into Swim was actually created many, many years ago. But when the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance formed as one, Sabina Hickman was hired as their CEO, who has, as you know, um, has done just a magical job over the last 5 years. I can't imagine where PHTA would be uh, over the last 5 years without her leadership. But as well, she stepped up and said, we really want to do something with this philanthropic initiative called Step Into Swim. And I think the year before I got there, I think they raised about $30,000. It didn't give out the funds that were necessarily tracked very well.
Mhm.
So when I came in, you know, it wasn't just about me, it was about a whole team of just people coming together and saying, we can do this and we can do it better. We can hold people accountable and we can raise more money in the industry. So our goal is to take those funds that are raised and give them out to swim lesson providers around the country to teach swimming lessons to those children and families that would not normally be able to afford it. That's sort of the mission statement. There's a lot of ways that we do that. And I think we have a checks and balances system now that we hold everybody accountable. I feel very strong about being a good steward of our donors' money. I just want to make sure that we are saving lives and we're doing it the right way.
Absolutely. We have opened up the chat and the question and answer function. So any attendees that are watching, please feel free. I'm monitoring those. Put in your questions. We'll pose them to Rowdy as we go through our discussion. Rowdy, I want to talk about some of the most inspiring outcomes from Step Into Swim. You've been doing this for a number of years right now. What are some of your most inspiring moments throughout this program?
Well, I mean, there are so many. I've almost lost count. So last year alone, Adam, we gave about $1.5 million out and affected 200 lesson providers around the country. We were in 43 different states. Um, and built some great partnerships along the way. And I think, you know, certainly a couple of them stand out. Our partnership with Stu Leonard, who's an incredible businessman in the Northeast. He has a chain of grocery stores that are the most amazing grocery store I've ever been in my life. Um, and he lost a son to drowning. Now this was 40 years ago, but has always been a huge advocate for water safety and built his own swim school, Stewie the Duck Swim School in Norwalk, Connecticut. And we've been friends for 20, 25 years. And he came to me a couple of years ago, said, oh, boy, I'd love to come back and work with you. in a way. And so we developed a partnership where we've taken $400,000 annually and spend it with lesson providers in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, the three different states that his grocery stores are in, and three states that we really were lacking on making an impact before Stu Leonard. We gave grants up, and not enough to where we really the supply was not there for the demand. We just didn't have the funds to be able to help. So these funds have really helped, and I'm talking really very, very underserved communities, Adam. So that's one. I think another one is Rosen Aquatic Center in Orlando. It's sort of our hub, our headquarters per se, as far as one facility goes. Another partnership with the Rosen Foundation, and right now they have 800 kids on a waiting list.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's how strong the demand is. And we've given, I think right now we're at about $200,000 with the partnership of the Lucky Meisenheimer Family Foundation, and um, and we found again a byproduct, but we found that of all the kids that have gone through the program, I think it was 70%, 67, 70% of those children went on to join the swim team as well. And every
Oh,
one of those children, Adam, are, in that category of free or reduced cost swim lessons. So that's again, that's not why we're doing it. But boy, I love that byproduct. Being a competitive swimmer, I love the fact they go on to a different level.
well, something I'm so glad you said that because we've talked about competitive swimming, we've talked about the water safety side and the importance of getting those foundational skills in the water. But swimming is an amazing gift, right? Because there's
Yes.
competitive outlets, not just competitive swimming, there's water polo, there's artistic, but there's also lifelong physical activity. There's other water recreation. There's water aerobics, there's all sorts of activities, and it goes beyond just childhood, right? These are activities that adults can get involved in.
No question about it. And I think that's the beauty of water, I mean, I was in Asheville yesterday, and I can tell you water can also be incredibly overpowering in so many ways. It's suffering through that hurricane and flooding. Um, but it can also bring great joy to families and in many, many different ways. And so I think the competitive side is something that's awesome. I'll stack our sport against any other for the values you learn by
Mhm.
being a competitive swimmer. Um, but uh, but it's also something that anything around, well, my wife was a water aerobics instructor for many years, and she will certainly speak to that. And it's a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, and something else that you said that I want to pick up on a little bit is supply matching demand. And what I've heard and experienced, anecdotally over really since the beginning of the COVID pandemic is we just don't have the supply in Learn to Swim in most parts of this country to meet the demand of families. I mean, I've heard some cities, even on the West Coast, where a parks district opens up their swim lesson program, and in the first hour, all of the slots for the summer are filled, and there's parents on a waiting list. Is that something that you still, sense around the country that we need more supply to meet the demand?
Absolutely. And supply in many different ways. Obviously, finances. We get I guess about 300 grant requests a year. 350, I think we got 350 in 2024. So we were able to fulfill a lot of them, but we did 200 and there were 350 grant requests. And those other 150 were amazing applications that we just couldn't fulfill because we just didn't have the funding. So the financial part is a big part of it, but it's also, and you and I were talking about this before we started the webinar, is the fact that we just don't have enough pools, man. I mean, they're closing left and right. These public pools are so critical to a community's health and well-being.
Yeah.
Um, And no better example of this, Adam, and we were talking about it as well, when I was in Asheville. So we have an incredible partner, Hayward, whose headquarters is in Charlotte. And now this is an extreme example, but this is an example, to tell you the truth, it's all across the country. But um, and so complete devastation from the hurricane last September, and they had four pools. Two of them were wiped off the map. They're gone. The other two were severely damaged. So Hayward stepped up with some great supplies and equipment, and we also gave them some money for grants. I mean, for swim lessons, because $10,000 will still go a long way, and that's what our gift was. And I'm saying this because I mean, they're just trying to find water. And there was one pool that we actually visited, Adam, 2 days ago, and 50 meters right on the river. And of course, completely devastated. And they're thinking it might not open until 2028. And that pool served 15,000 members of the community. And it literally broke my heart because I'm thinking, where are those 15,000 people going to go?
Yeah.
And where are they going to learn how to swim? There were swim lessons done in that pool. So there was a lot of concern that those children are now going to be swimming in the river and swimming in lakes up there, and taking chances that they would have never done before. So and that's what happens when public pools close. It affects the community in more ways than just going down and taking a dip on a hot summer day. That's that's part of it, but there's a much bigger part, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I do encourage, please go look at Step Into Swim's Facebook, Instagram page. There were photos shared from that event yesterday. And Roddy, I know the exact pool that you're talking about, and that picture was just seeing the sediment and the mud that had
Yeah.
solidified at the bottom of the pool. And and what an incredible facility for a
It
community to
was.
have access to and then lose. And this is something I always say to people, whether there's a pool there or not, people are going to go recreate around the water
Yeah.
because it's in our culture. We enjoy doing it. It's a great place for family friends, or for families, friends to make memories together. And let's face it, the weather's hot. And in many
Yeah.
places of the countries, it's already there. So we go to the water to cool off.
Yeah.
And when we lose an asset like a public pool, so let's talk a little bit about that because we make mention that these public facilities are so critical for so many communities, but we see, as you mentioned, I think earlier, we see more public facilities closing than opening right now. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about Eatonville, Florida, because there was a really unique project there, and really seeing that the community and the local government coming together to recognize that they needed to save their community pool.
Yeah, in fact, I'm heading up there Friday for the 1 year anniversary, and it's a great story. That's another great story. It's a pool, incredibly underserved community. I think 98% of the children on our free lunch program, and there have been drownings, and I'll never forget it because when I worked for the Y, from oh, I worked there until 2020, for about 5 years. Eatonville was one place that we would go to teach swim lessons. So I would provide the lesson, te the teachers, and it was great. And then the pool went into disrepair after COVID and shut down. So it's been shut down now for over, well, about 5 years. Well, it was 5 years until last summer, where a gentleman named Don Garden, who's the president and CEO of All Seasons Pools, took $500,000, which was his complete advertising budget, and gave it all to Eatonville Pool and said, I want to rebuild this pool. I don't want anything for it. I'm just going to plow all my money in rebuilding this pool. So he put on all new pumps and new decking. And I mean, it's a magical pool. Landscaping, you name it, it was done. So we had this grand opening last summer, Step Into Swim, along with a private donor, Melissa Mishu, who was awesome. She donated 10,000. We matched that. We gave a $20,000 grant for swim lessons last summer, and we transformed this facility. Um, and it has provided so much joy and happiness and safety for an entire community, buddy. I mean, it's not just three or four kids, it's an entire town. And so we're having our 1 year celebration there on Saturday, and so I'm going to drive up for that, and I can't wait to celebrate this year because it wasn't something that Don said, here you go, here's the pool, now see you later. Carecraft uh, has stepped up in a big way. Greg Howard, who is the CEO and a board member of PHTA, has stepped up and gave all the chemicals for the pool. Floridra has been involved, and another great partner of Step In to Swim. This is where, you know, so many people from the private and public sector came together to do this. And that's not, as you know, in many ways, that's very rare. Public and private don't mix, man. And when they can come together for something like this, it was pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to going back on Friday and Saturday for the celebration.
Yeah, I encourage everyone listening to our discussion today to go check out, just Google Eatonville, Florida pool. You will find information. You can check out Pool Horizons. There was a nice feature done on Eatonville and the
Yeah,
Pool Horizons project. And it's just incredible to see that public-private partnership come together. And I mean, if we could see that replicated in communities across the country, I just think it's such a fantastic example of when these parties recognize the need that, and what a community pool can mean and do for the population in a town. It's a worthwhile investment.
it really is. It really is for so many reasons. It's not just a reason for recreational, but it's all about bringing people together in so many ways. Uh, I don't know about you now, not so much as a child, but the greatest memories I have of joy in in my life as a father and as a grandfather, and certainly as a child, was around swimming pools and swimming around
Yeah.
water. And that joy is completely wiped off a map when a parent loses a child to drowning. I mean, it's horrific and for so many reasons. It's not only drownings, but it's near drownings. And so, I'm digressing, I guess, but again, to have a pool like this in Eatonville that brings so much joy to families and brings the idea of keeping children safe in and around water is pretty special. I wish more communities had more Dawn Gardens. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you said there because the reality is, yes, the pool provides a safe place where lessons can be provided. Yes, community recreation, all of that can take place. But to have a safe place where you can learn to swim because drowning is 100% preventable. This is
It is.
one of the things I always tell people when we talk, statistics around the topic of water safety is, but it doesn't have to be this way. This doesn't necessarily have to be our reality. The challenge is there's multiple steps to take to reduce that risk, but learning to swim is such a critical one, and making sure all communities and all people have access to that opportunity is critically important. Before we
Yeah.
go to some attendee questions and comments, tell our viewers, anyone listening, if they want to get involved with Step Into Swim, they want to apply for a grant, they want to help support the program, how can they do that?
Yeah, it's really easy. It's stepintoswim.org, and then you kind of just drill down to the application side of things and go into the portal. There's a portal. Jillian Wilkins, who works alongside me at Step Into Swim, handles all our grants and our grant process. And it's easy to apply. It takes, I don't know, 20-30 minutes. It's not a hard application process. We're year round. We shut down November and December from the application process. Otherwise, we're 10 months out of the year. We give our grants 12 months out of the year. We we know there are swim lessons taught year round, and we want to be a year round program. And obviously, if you want to get involved from a donor standpoint or just involved from an energy standpoint, believe me, we're always looking for good people. We have great partners already, and the more the merrier, as I always say.
Yeah, and one thing, Rowdy, too, I want to just plug real quick is the Swim Act. You, along
Mm.
with close to 50 of our industry members and partners, were up on Capitol Hill last week at PHTA's Hill Day, and I think our great team set up no less than 70 plus meetings with congressional staff and senators and congressmen. But one of the key points was pushing the Swim Act. Can you talk a little bit about the Swim Act and why PHTA and all of our partners are trying to see that through this congressional term?
Yeah, Adam, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's not rocket science. This act is not very complicated, right? It's bipartisan. Representative Stubbe, who's the congressman from my district here in Port Charlotte, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is an incredible water safety advocate in South Miami, are the co-sponsors of this bill. And it basically says that a parent should be allowed to take the FSA and HSA funding for swim lessons for their children. I mean, I don't think it's very complicated. It's just, we have so much that we can put on our FSA. My credit card, my FSA card, I can put so many different things on that. And I think it was the IRS who basically says swimming lessons is a recreational thing. It's not a life-saving thing. So and think about the insurance cost of near drownings. I mean, the money that could be saved long term with allowing this for families is something that at least when you and I were there, we saw both sides say, "Oh, yeah, this is obvious. Why aren't we doing this?" Stopped at Tommy Tuberville's office, Senator, and he said, "Oh, I'm all in. Let me know what I need to do to help." He didn't know about it, and many of the senator and congressman staff didn't know. But once we explained a little bit in detail, they said, "This is a great thing. Let's do this. Let's make this happen."
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you for being a champion of that up on the Hill last week, along with all of our industry members and partners that joined us. I did just put the link to the Swim Act in the chat. So if you're listening, feel free to click that link or open it up and save it. You're able to actually go on and sign on to support. There's information of how you can reach out to your congressional representation. Sometimes your congressman and senator only wants to hear from you if you're from their district. So it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone or to write a letter to them to let them know you care about the Swim Act and it's something they should get behind. So, Rowdy, just a few comments in the chat that I'd love to get to. This
Mm.
is from Erin Kidd, going back to the beginning of our discussion. She says, "I love what you said. You got cut for many sports and then tried swimming. That's inspirational in itself. Seeing my own kids' confidence in the pool, knowing that they have mastered a life skill is very reassuring from someone who's a pool designer and a mother."
Yeah, that's a great point that Aaron makes. That you know, I know this sounds kind of corny, but my belief is every child was born with a gift. I think the Lord put us all on this earth for a very specific purpose. I didn't really discover my purpose until I was 17, and certainly had some challenges as a young child, and I was going down a path that I probably am not too proud of today. I wasn't anything real bad, but it was potentially going to be bad until I found swimming, and in many ways, swimming saved my life, Adam. So I owe the sport a lot, and I believe that gift is inside all of us. And maybe it's swimming, maybe it's playing the piano or being a good teacher or a doctor or whatever. But certainly for me, swimming is, I tell people, Adam, just follow my three rules. Everything will be just fine. Just go to bed early, eat oatmeal in the morning, and swim every day. That's all you got to do. And then you'll be
Those are
fine.
three fantastic goals. rules, Rowdy. I do have to bring this up, Roddy. I mean, this was a really special week in the sport of swimming. We saw Katie Ledecky break a world record. I think that was the first she's broken in quite some time. And then
Yeah.
um, I think we saw Gretchen hit a fantastic fly time. How special is it? I know for someone that follows the sport like you do, announces, I know you weren't calling those races, but how special are those moments, both for the athletes and just the sport in general?
Yeah, they really are. And Katie Ledecky is an incredible representative of our sport. Certainly the greatest female swimmer in history. And if Michael Phelps is number one, which he is, I think Katie is more 1A now than number two. That's how great she has been for our sport. Her first world record in the 800 was back in 2016. 9 years later, she rebroke it and won her best time. And that's a long time to wait to go a best time in swimming, which is so important for a swimmer in so many ways. And Adam, she hasn't lost a race in the 1500 since she was 11 years old. I mean,
That's incredible.
she's 28 now. So yeah, it's she is a wonderful spokesperson and has helped in many ways with us at Step and to Swim. And then Gretchen Walsh is one of those just incredible swimmers. Her time, not to get in the weeds too much, but her time this past weekend would have been she went 54.6, broke the world record. Mark Spitz went 54.2 in 1972 when he won 7 gold medals.
Wow.
So her next race, I have a feeling she's going to beat Mark Spitz, which is just almost unheard of. But yeah, our sport's in good shape right now. The U.S. is swimming well, and we should be really good to go in 2028.
We had another comment come in. We have a couple from our friend Melissa McGarvey with British Swim School. She's watching live and says sometimes an individual sport like swimming can be helpful for kids who get anxious with a team sport.
Yeah, that's so true. The individuality of swimming is something that is certainly recognized, but in many ways, swimming is a team sport. I won 3 gold medals, and I wish I could have won 40 because I would have given one to each one of my teammates on that 84 team, honest to God, because I could not have done it without them. So yeah, swimming is an individual sport, and nobody sits on the bench in our sport, which is really cool. Everybody gets to participate. And the clock is many ways your best friend. So your one challenge is not only your friend next to you in the next lane, but it's also about the clock. And that's so great. That's another great thing about our sport.
Yeah. Also from one of our other friends, Megan Farrar with the Zach Foundation,
Ah,
talking,
Megan.
yeah, talking a little bit
Oh,
about,
well, she should know about Eatonville because when I did those lessons for the Y, it was a Zach Foundation. It was Zach camp.
well, actually, you know what? That you're taking the words right out of the comment. Eatonville,
Oh,
Florida is the first incorporated all-black town in the United States. So
mm,
exciting to hear about the work they're doing there. The Zach Foundation has been running Zach camps at the Boys and Girls Club there.
yeah.
An incredible organization to partner with as well. And she thanks you for your leadership on that, Rowdy.
No, no, no. Megan, the Cohen family, Brian and Karen, Zach Foundation is. I've been so proud to be with them for the last 10 years. I serve on the board at the Zach Foundation, and really they were the ones that were a big part of Eatonville in the early days. Early days, I mean, 10 years ago. And again, COVID kind of ruined all of that. But when we had Zach Camp right there at the Boys and Girls Club, the kids would literally walk right over, and then the Y would help with the swim lesson side of things. So it again, it was all about partnerships, and I know the Zach Foundation is very near and dear to so many people, and I'm proud to be an ambassador, ally, friend.
Yeah. And equally well said about the Zach Foundation and their work. I want to go back to some Melissa McGarvey as another question. Any advice on how to approach the larger companies like grocery store chains to see how incredible it would be for them to invest in these grants and pitch it as a win-win for their business? We know that many large companies have budgets set aside sometimes for these exact programs, corporate responsibility and philanthropic impact. We just need to get in front of the right people. What do you what's your experience been like that?
I think a lot of it's research. You know, you need to, I mean, again, this is not why you would approach them, but it's very personal for Stu Leonard, right? And in many cases, you'll find somebody that is the leader of an insurance company, you know, and they have a child that swims, you know. It's all about finding and networking and connection and research, and that takes some time. Fortunately for me, Adam, and you. We work for an industry that is all about water, right? I mean, we work for the pool and hot tub industry, and it is full of suppliers and contractors and builders and retailers and you name it. So their lives revolve around a swimming pool. But I will tell you that when I first started, I had the door slam in my face many, many times. I had a real struggle raising money when I first started in January 2021 because nobody wanted to talk about drowning. But I think eventually I tried to tell people we can't hide our head in the sand. I have met families that have had a child drown in their backyard swimming pool for one reason or another, and they filled the pool in. They just, and not only did they fill the pool in, but their neighbors filled it in. Um, so drowning, and I don't want to be, and I say this with some trepidation because I don't want it to sound crass, but drowning is not good for business.
Mhm.
Drowning destroys families. It destroys them. Near drownings destroy families. But it's not good for business, man. The whole idea is the more swimmers we create, which is the positive way to talk about this, the more swimmers we create, the more swimming pools we're going to build. So I think the industry kind of wrapped their head around that idea of saying, yeah, this is a positive thing for my community. This is a positive thing for my company. And anytime anybody wants to hear me preach about that, I'll be glad to talk to you about it because there are ways to get the people to say, listen, this is good for you and it's good for business. Not the reason why you're doing it, but it can be the byproduct of that.
Absolutely. And I what I find, and this is just in the general population, both with parents and business leaders, is sometimes they just don't know how big of
Right.
an issue this actually is. And how easy the solution is.
Right.
And what's great about funding something like swim lessons or swim lesson grant programs is it's a tangible impact, right? We're impacting kids in communities, and to me, this is great because so many people swimming has been out of reach for because there is a cost to swimming, right? Roddy, something you and I had talked about a number of times over the last couple years is, sometimes it's not even just the cost of the swim lesson itself. Sometimes it's getting the kid to the swim lesson and transportation and the swimsuit and the goggles and everything like that. And there have been some great initiatives around the country. I know the New Jersey Swim Safety Alliance, as an example, they've been doing a swim lesson drive for the swimsuit drive for the last couple years, where they're getting swimsuits donated to be able to hand to kids to be able so that it's not another barrier of entry to learn to swim.
Yeah, it really is, Adam. And there are a lot of barriers. It's not just about the swim lesson itself, but there are so many other cases, and especially the travel, because in many of these underserved communities, the parent has to work. You know, they can't get their kid to swim lessons. You know, so the travel is a real issue. I'm not sure how to tackle that sometimes because there's the liability side of things, there's setting it all up, there's getting the kids to the bus or to the transport. I mean, there's a lot of issues at hand that we still it's a work in progress, and we'll just continue to chip away at it as much as possible. A lot of people do it right, and we need to follow their lead.
Absolutely. We're coming down on our last 10 minutes, so I want to just give another call out. If you have a question for Rowdy, please feel free to put that in the chat or the question and answer tool at the bottom of your screen. Um, Rowdy, before we go to my last couple questions on my sheet, do you want to give a shout out? Marianne Downing says hello from San Diego. We'll be seeing her soon. We'll be out in San Diego, you and I, for the
Yes.
world's largest swimming lesson on June 26th. That's another fantastic event that, if you're not aware of it, go to WLSL.org, World's Largest Swimming Lesson, and learn about how you can host an event in your community and draw attention on this one day of the importance of learn to swim.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's your brainchild, Adam, and I'm so proud that you were able to put that together and really make a huge impact in the San Diego and LA area, Southern California, where obviously drownings happen. Those Southern Belt states like California, Texas, Arizona, Florida, Louisiana. I mean, the list goes on and on. But they happen in North Dakota and Minnesota just as much, So we know the states that are really impacted so much, and it's great to be able to try to do something for that area of the country.
Absolutely. And so, Roddy, my last two questions to you. As someone who's dedicated your life both to the sport of swimming and really water safety as a whole, what legacy do you hope to leave in terms of drowning prevention and water safety awareness?
Well, I think the cliche would be, I'd love to be able to leave this world where there are no more drownings. That's not going to happen. I mean, I think we'd be foolish to believe that, but I do believe we're making an impact, Adam. And it's not just us. It's not just Step in the Swim. There's a lot of other great organizations like that Foundation, like so many others, um, that are making an impact. When we did that study first with the University of Memphis, it found that 70% of African American children had little or no swim skills. That statistic now is at 64%. So we are making an impact, It's still way too much. That means 2/3 of African American children don't know how to swim. But again, the chipping away at it is something that I'd love to be able to say at the end of the day, on my gravestone, it'll probably read, Rowdy Gaines dash swimmer, and I'm okay with that. I want it to read, pretty good father, pretty good husband, pretty good son, pretty good friend. Um, but I'd also like it to read that, hey, together with so many, we made an impact on preventing drownings. And, we put 30,000 kids in swim lessons last year with Step in the Swim. So I know we saved some of those kids' lives by
Yeah,
putting them in swim lessons, right? I mean, it's the leading cause of death in children ages 1 to 4. So we had to save lives with it, right? And so that feels pretty good. And the more we can do, the better it will be.
absolutely. And that leads me to my last question is, we are just at the start of Water Safety Month. This is really a month where we, as the water safety community, the aquatics community, the pool and hot tub industry, get motivated for water safety. So what's your challenge to anyone listening, for whether it be this Water Safety Month, this summer season? What would you challenge them to do?
Well, my challenge always is to the parent. Um, two really critical things. You said it at the very beginning. We have found the cure. Uh, we found a cure to drowning. Put your kid in swim lessons. You know, find a way. There are so many um, advocates out there for water safety that there's almost no excuse for you not to find a place to put your child in swim lessons, especially if you live in a demographic area or geographic area rather where there's water.
Mhm.
If you live in the Sahara Desert, okay, maybe putting your child in swim lessons should not be a priority. But there are not too many places in this country that you can't find water. So put your kid in swim lessons. Again, it's not brain surgery. And the second thing is I would please beg parents, I beg them, Adam, please never take your eye off your child. We live in an environment now where this thing right here has become the bane of my existence when it's around a swimming pool. Because as you know these statistics more than I do. I mean, a child can drown in as little as 20 or 30 seconds. So what I try to do is when I'm around a parent, I go, send a text somebody. Usually takes 20, 30 seconds, right? That's how that's how long it can take.
Yeah.
So this age of um, being distracted is at an all-time high. And the drowning rates, if you know more about it than I do, they kind of ebb and flow, but
Mhm.
they're there, and it's so preventable in so many ways by those two things. Um, Everything, I mean, there are other things, and we'll talk about them on the Today Show, barriers and life jackets and all those kinds of things that certainly are a big factor. But the biggest two for me that I'd like to say, man, put your kid in swim lessons and don't take your eye off of them, even with a lifeguard present.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out. There is on stepintoswim.org. You can go and there's a swim lesson checklist made by our friends at NDPA that really arm a parent with all the questions to ask about finding the right swim provider, right style of swim lessons for their child and for their family and their budget. There's some great resources out there from a number of different organizations, but really, really encourage parents to take charge of that. That's something that parents, this time of year, unfortunately, the wait lists sometimes are long for learn to swim providers. That's the other great point I just want to make. We focus on this topic, this time of year because it's the start of summer, it's the start of swim season. But swim lessons are something that can really be any time throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially in those northern states where there are so many indoor pools. So yeah, definitely possible anytime.
Well, Rowdy, thank you so much for joining us as we kick off National Water Safety Month with all of our partners. We want to give a special thank you to Pentair for being our National Water Safety Month sponsor, as well as the other organizations that PHTA partners with to support National Water Safety Month, those being the American Red Cross, the World Water Park Association, the National Park and Recreation Association, as well as the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. Just a couple reminders before we let you go. We do have some live virtual Genesis education taking place in May. We have the opportunity for you to take Genesis D231 color theory and its application, as well as Genesis E211 fluid hydraulics for pool and spas. Again, those are virtual courses happening in the evenings in the month of May with our fantastic Genesis faculty. It's a great opportunity to get that education and knowledge. And then PHTA also just launched our new pool math course that's available on our learning management system. And then finally, don't forget to check out our mastermind event that's taking place September 23rd to the 25th in Fort Lauderdale. You can learn all about these courses and educational opportunities on phta.org. And we invite you to join us next week as we'll continue our Water Safety Month webinar series. Next Wednesday at noon Eastern, we'll be talking with the leadership of the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan to learn more about that work. Until then, Rowdy, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to those that joined us live for today's discussion. And as always, thanks to my colleague Diana Bouts for helping pull this off. Until next Wednesday, stay safe and we'll see you soon.